Have you ever watched those travel influencers on Instagram and see them going to all these exotic places and they're seemingly always traveling and wonder, well, how do they pay for that? Well, I'm going to share with you today different ways to pay for your travel as the average person would. Hello, welcome to Solo Travel Adventures. I'm Cheryl Esch, your solo travel coach, expert, and advocate for women traveling solo. Well, I often get that question because I live a normal life. I actually have a job outside of doing this and coming to you every week and giving you content and resources. But I am just your average person. I do not have affiliates like many of those travel influencers may have, or they get their hotels and their accommodations paid for because of a sponsorship with somebody, or they have a vlog that is making them money through their travels, or they have some sort of product that they're also providing that's related to travel. Maybe they're a travel agent or advisor on the side. And so that's a way that they are able to pay for their travel. But I find that is a small percentage of the people out there. And I am just like you. I am just an average person. I am not wealthy. I don't have a sugar daddy, as we might call it here in the US. I work, and that is, I have different ways that I do pay for my travel that prevents me from going into debt, because I think that is kind of sometimes, we get so excited about going someplace, and I have been there where the travel itself, and honestly, Iceland kind of caught me off guard as far as how expensive it was. So if you're on a budget, then sometimes that you might have to, put things on a credit card, which I don't advise, but it has happened. It's happened to me. So I'm going to share some ways that you can get your funds in place to fund your travel, meaning you're going to not have to necessarily use your credit card. Well, the number one thing that I have done in the past is I have set up a savings account that is strictly for travel. And so contributing to it monthly or biweekly, or maybe depending on how often, if you're like me and you have a regular job, definitely, setting aside a certain amount so that, thinking about a trip that might cost X, right? And trying to save enough each month so that at the time that you do plan to travel, you have enough funds for that trip. That's obviously going to be one of the best ways. I personally, people have asked, well, how did you, I did the Camino last year. I just did Iceland. And for me, these bigger trips, I have been fortunate in that I have received a tax return here in the U.S. This is U.S. I'm not sure how taxes work in any other country, but I've gotten a nice tax return the past few years. And so I've used that money strictly, I've allocated it for these trips, and knowing that, I've put it aside. For example, last year, even though I got my tax return, usually it comes in April, I didn't go on that trip till September, but I put that money aside. So that is one way that I personally fund. And I just know that, going into, I get this return, it's going to be used for travel. Because me, it was money I wasn't banking on, right? So it's kind of a nice bonus. Another way that I do pay for travel, and I'm learning more about it, I can't say I'm an expert on it, but there is, of course, some great resources out there, and I'm going to provide one that I've been diving into. But credit card points or loyalty rewards with airlines or hotels. I have gotten so many free flights with Southwest. That is a credit card that I have, and it strictly gives me points for Southwest travel. And so since I live in Dallas, that is one of their hubs here. And it's been a great tool to help me, take some domestic trips, actually. You might have some hotel loyalty points depending on how much you travel, and those can add up. Just be careful with any of the hotel or airlines, or even I used to have Amtrak reward points, but after a certain amount of time where they sit dormant and they're not used, or you're not adding to or using them, they will go away. They expire. And so I also had a recent event last year where American Airlines, because I hadn't flown American for a while, that I had a lot of points that they said were going to expire unless I either used them or flew American to add to that total. And so I actually chose to use them on a trip that I went back home with in December. So I didn't lose those points. So just keep an eye on that. I lost all my Amtrak points, unfortunately, because, I only did that one trip. So just know that can happen. But credit card points don't necessarily expire. And depending on what credit card you get, a lot of, for example, Chase, Sapphire Preferred, they work with other loyalty programs. So you could potentially transfer those points over to something else that you might need it for. If you are wanting to dive a little deeper into understanding points and how to use points for travel, I highly recommend Just Get Out of Town Way of Travel, or JGOOT Way. They have a book out. It's a publication by Joel McDonald, and they have found a way to, use points. And they've gotten so many free flights and even upgrades utilizing their points they have. So this book has been a great resource for me in helping me understand a little more about the point system. So if you're interested, you may want to just go ahead and purchase their book. They have other resources as well. House sitting would be another way to at least reduce your travel cost. We know that accommodations really take up a lot of our finances when we're traveling, outside of maybe your airfare. And so if you could take that out of the equation, man, there is so much more you could do. And so I've done some local house sitting or pet sitting, and preparing myself for some international. Now, back in episode 83, I had Kate Evans on, and she gave us all kinds of information on how to utilize house sitting, and they've been doing it for a long time, her and her husband, and she's even got a book out about it. So if you want to reference back to episode 83, you can hear her suggestions on how to utilize house sitting when you travel. And I actually got to meet her personally in person when I was in Portugal. She was at a house sit, a fabulous house sit, I might add, incredible. When I was visiting her in Portugal. And so they have had some pretty unique and incredible experiences. They have repeat house sitting customers. So it has helped them travel the world. So that is one way you could dive into possibly saving money to pay for your travel. There's also volunteering abroad as an option. So you could find places that are looking for volunteers. Sometimes they let you stay for free. There's also work exchange programs like Workaway. Same thing with Workaway or WWOOF. That's where you work on some farms, organic farms. They will offer free accommodations in exchange for your work. And it's not a full day. I've seen some Workaway opportunities, and they are all over the world, by the way. So they're only requiring maybe 5 hours a day, Monday through Friday. And so you do have some time to explore, and the areas that wherever you can look in Workaway and, pinpoint, maybe you just want to go to a specific country, and you can kind of look and do a search of just that country. You could also teach English abroad. You could also freelance abroad depending on your skills. So if you have some special skills that might be useful or beneficial, one thing that I think of often is there's a lot of photographers that do freelance work, of course. And if you go to some of these very famous, popular tourist places, there's many of us solo travelers included that want to capture some professional pictures. And it's hard as a solo traveler. And so I see many people organizing. Maybe it's in Bali. I saw one lady recently did one in Colombia. So you can hire a photographer to take pictures. So if you are a photographer, that is maybe a skill set you have, you could certainly use that abroad in these types of scenarios. I have a skill set of also teaching Pilates, and I am working on connecting so that I could use my Pilates in a freelance opportunity abroad. And so that's something I'm working on. I've connected with a group that kind of helps connect Pilates instructors with Pilates studios. And so I'm hoping to possibly use my skills abroad in that way. So maybe think about, what skills do you have? Do they lend themselves to something that you could do abroad that would offer you the opportunity? And if you're in the US, it could potentially be a tax write-off. Obviously, please speak to your accountant and your tax specialist about that possibility. Now we're going to get into, ways that you could save or earn money before a trip in order to save for a trip. So these are just more, what are things you can do in your life to, one thing, reduce your overall spending in your day-to-day in order to save for your travel, i.e., can you downsize in some way? What do you have? I mean, are you using all those streaming options? Probably not. Do you really need to eat out every day? Probably not. So these are ways you obviously can reduce your overall spending. You don't need that daily Starbucks coffee. Sorry to say, you can be saving that $7 and put it into an account. Think about that, $7 every day. That could add up. Or just reducing maybe where you're living. Maybe you want to move further away from an expensive city. I've known many, they are expats or nomads now that have kind of set themselves up so that they can actually use, so they've downsized maybe earlier in their life, so that they can actually use, I forgot to mention this, but you could use your interest from your investments to sort of pay for your travel. And hopefully we are all on track in our retirements that maybe this is a possibility. Something to consider, maybe that downsizing is where you need to go. But I've done that. I downsized out of some expensive apartments. I have made sure that my car is paid off, by the way, so I don't have that. So that's a huge chunk of money if you live in the US, having those expensive car payments. So things like that, I'm talking about big ticket things. How could you reduce those things in your day-to-day? Is your car insurance, which I know is really expensive, can you shop around and find a cheaper rate for yourself to save money? Things like that. There's many, many ways in which, if you look at your monthly budget and your overall spending, that I am sure we all can find ways to cut the fat, right? And that way you can save that money. The trick is, though, if you cut the fat, say you reduce your monthly spending let's just hypothetically say $300. You have to make sure you're putting that $300 into that travel savings account and not spending it elsewhere just because you have it. You can sell unwanted items to fund your trip. You got some bigger items, things you aren't using. Get rid of them, right? Make a little extra cash. Could you Airbnb your place or even rent out a room? So if you have a big house and maybe it's just you and your spouse right now and you have an empty nest, could you rent out a bedroom? College students, somebody else that could just, and you make several $100s from renting out a room, which could go directly to your travel account. And then finally, could you do another side hustle, a second job? I do. And my side hustle is actually, I dog sit for paid. There's some times when I have done it for free as part of a house sit exchange sort of program. But nowadays I have so many clients that I charge for dog sitting, and it's nice extra money, some months more than others. But it is a great way for me to help fund my travel. And that's actually where I often designate that money. I make a little extra dog sitting. I'm putting that money towards my travel typically. So don't equate yourself. Don't look at those travel influencers, those people on Instagram. And I am just like you. I have to be creative in finding ways to pay for my travel. And usually it's, my hard work or my creative way of saving or finding ways to not have to pay with maybe points, right? So I hope that this information was helpful to you and that you are just thinking of ways now instead of, looking at a trip that you're looking at. Let's just say, hypothetically, you want to go somewhere and it's going to cost you $2,000 for this trip. And you're thinking, oh my gosh, that's so much money. There's just no way I could do that. But if you start to slowly save that money or figure out ways that maybe you can save that, say, $700 on using points to pay for your airfare, right? Then your trip is now $1,300. So things like that, getting creative and thinking of ways instead of just handing out that credit card or using your hard-earned cash all the time. There are ways around it that you can reduce your cost. Because for me, I want to travel more and spend less. And so if I'm spending less on a trip, I get to spend it on another one. That's sort of my way of thinking. If I'm going to spend, maybe I have this budget of X and I go overboard and I spend it on one trip versus could I have actually gotten 2 trips out of that money in some way just by being creative? Well, sisters, I hope this encourages you that there is more than one way to pay for your travel out there. And maybe you have thought of some other ways. Maybe you have a little trick up your sleeve that I would love to hear about, different ways to save in your travels. And get out there, sisters, and have that adventure. Now, I've mentioned in previous episodes, I am launching a coaching program. I have a coaching program for women that are wanting to travel solo. Maybe they've never traveled solo. It is one-on-one coaching I'm offering. It is launching on May 27th, right around the corner. I'm taking names, getting you on a wait list, and would love to also have you book a call with me to understand a little more about the program. I'm focusing on women that need to find healing in their life, whether that's from a past trauma, from grief, or just wanting to, they've had very stressful year maybe, and they are overwhelmed. And I want to help you get over that and utilize travel in a way that you can potentially find transformation and healing in your life. So please, book a call. That link will be in the show notes, and I would love to connect with you